Hi there, and welcome to ReinardSynth episode number 25. Which one shall we work on this time, eh? Let's work on a Crumar Bit One 6-voice analog synthesizer, often described as a quirky, chirpy sounding analog synth. Well, analog, its oscillators, two per voice, are actually low-resolution digital ones, where from a master sawtooth waveform are generated a triangle waveform and a pulse-width modulated waveform. I found the way it does its DCO thing rather amusing because of its clever simplicity. I will guide you through later. Quirky it is as well, because the oscillator's detune cannot be programmed and can be changed only using a front panel slider. Noise is also not programmable, and its contribution to the final sound can only be changed using a slider on the front panel as well. And its 6 notes polyphony is split across the two outputs, lower and upper, in a semi-stereo spread thing. But if you do not know it, 3 of the 6 notes you play cannot be heard, and you think the synth is broken, like I did. Well, I lost half an hour of my life because of that. Another quirky thing. When you switch on the Bit One, do not press any key for at least 5 seconds because, well, that will determine the transposition used. The whole key will be transposed. How much? 1, 2, 3 centimeters up. This got me confused because why isn't this? Hey. What if I turn it off? Do not touch the keyboard for 5 seconds. It's normal. RTFM Reinhard. While we are at the user manual, look at that marketing blob at the end. The Bit One has been designed as an open system, expandable, renewable without limit. Yeah, whatever. But other than that, it has some nice features. 2 oscillators per voice, pulse width can be modulated by velocity, separate ADSR for the VCF and VCA, which are really voltage controlled by the way. VCF uses the SEM3328 filter ICs. It also has a velocity sensitive keybed, where velocity can be used to modulate attack time of the ADSR. You can split the keybed and have 2 different sounds, left and right. But don't forget to press the split point on the keybed first, otherwise the front panel remains unresponsive. Really got me. And you can layer 2 sounds, and it has a duophonic unison mode.
Formidable.
Well, what needs to be done with this one? Let's see.
Okay, my first plan of attack is to clean the contacts on the keybed, because they are iffy. So she deoxidized them. I'm going to replace the capacitors on the power supply. On the soundboard, the capacitors. I'm going to clean the contacts, because this media contact is a bit iffy. That is working. I'm not touching that. I'm going to clean and investigate how I'm going to improve the switches. Oh, of course, install the battery. Okay.
Oh, and I almost forgot. Because of its age, I want to do a complete power supply regulator refresh, just to be sure. But it's not just the electronics I want to work on. I also want to make it a bit more posher, a bit more bling. Well, for instance, the side panels. I do not like the original side panels, so I changed them to 2 posh wooden thingamabobs instead.
Much better.
A shout out to my daughter, by the way, who made these wooden side panels in her wood workshop. Now also the front panel LEDs need a bit more bling in my opinion. The red ones are a bit tame for me, so I changed them to white LEDs. This also means changing the existing current limiting resistance to a new appropriate values. So not just a replace LED thing, mind you. Okay then, let's first have a close look at how sounds are generated in the Bit One, because I found that clever. And then onward with the usual nerdy repair stuff. Oh yes, of course, there will be a moment of zen. Happy viewing! Okay, I promised to go into more details on how the Crumar Bit One's digital oscillators work. Most of the magic is happening on the board here. And let's start at the beginning. These ICs here. These are 8253 programmable interrupt timer ICs, and here they are used in a square wave generator mode. Each of these ICs can generate 3 individual clock signals with a programmable frequency. The input frequency is divided by a whole number ranging from 1 to 65,535. That's a 16-bit number for those who've not dozed off already. This frequency determines the pitch of the DCOs used in the voices. This is, however, not a complete story. Let's go to the next step, counters. The output of the 8253 goes to a 4520 CMOS 4-bit counter IC. And together with a clock signal, they are a 5-bit counter that continuously counts from 0 to 31 in binary. 2 counters are used per voice, so there are 6 of these ICs in the bit 1. What is this counter used for? Well, they are fed into a resistor network to create a poor man's digital to analog converter. No fancy, complex, high-quality digital to analog converter ICs here, just a discrete resistor network. How does it work? Well, if you paid attention at physics class in school, it's basic Ohm's law at work here. The resistors form a voltage divider network, and depending on the counter output, the output voltage changes as well. So, for instance, if the bit pattern 00010, that's 2 in decimal, is at the input of the resistor network, the equivalent schematics look like this, and using Ohm's law you can calculate the output voltage. It's at plus 0.315 volts. If you change the value to decimal 17, the equivalent schematics looks like this, and again, using Ohm's law, you can calculate that the output voltage now is 2.25 volts. Counting from 0 to 31 then results in a sawtooth waveform. Back to the frequency. Going through 0 to 31 creates actually one cycle of the sawtooth waveform. For a tone like the central A, this would need to be done 440 times per second, 440 Hz. As a consequence, the frequency out of the clock divider 8253 shall therefore be 30 ohms as high as the needed audio frequency. So for a 440 Hz tone, the 8253 needs to output a 14,080 Hz clock pulse. With a 2 MHz clock input, this means that the 8253 needs to divide the 2 MHz clock by 142 to get the required audio frequency times 32 counterclock frequency. But the 8253 can only divide the input frequency by whole numbers, so there's always a bit of rounding up and down going on here, which results in slightly off audio frequencies. Slightly off from the real tone frequency, I mean. In the middle registers, this is just a fraction off, and normally you will not hear it. In the higher frequency, it will be a bit more, but percentage-wise still negligible. The Crumar engineers had to make a trade-off between numbers of components and ICs, resolution of resulting sawtooth, clock frequency to the 8253, and I think they struck a workable compromise here. I tried to get a feel between the bit resolution, master clock frequency, and what the division factor is for the 8253 for the audio frequencies, and what the resulting error in the audio frequency is after generating the sawtooth. So with 5 bits of digital to analog conversion resolution and 2 MHz input clock, the absolute deviation from the real tone frequency gets worse the higher you go on the keyboard. You can improve the accuracy of the frequency by lowering the DAC resolution to 4 bits or even 3 bits, but then you get a very edgy sawtooth waveform, and as it is used for generating the triangle and pulse waveforms, you also get some knock-on effects. They could have increased the input frequency from 2 to, for instance, 3 MHz as supported back then by the 8253, kept the DAC resolution to 5 bits, and they would still have a better tone frequency accuracy, but yeah, we'll never know why they didn't. Okay, on with it. After buffering, the first transmorphification takes place, from a sawtooth to a triangle. This is done with just one transistor. I searched for how other analog synthesizers do it, but they always use a more complex circuitry, with better quality also. The clever use of just one transistor to do this is clever, but does not generate a true triangle. Some corners have been cut here. I replicated the sawtooth to triangle conversion circuit on a breadboard and fed it with a sawtooth waveform going from 0 to 5 volt from my signal generator. And if you look closely at the waveform, you see two aberrations. This flat, short plateau at the top of the triangle, and the glitch when going from 5 to 0 volt in the sawtooth waveform. I do not completely understand it. The first bit of the waveform I get, but not the last bit. With input voltage from 0 to 0.6 volt, the on voltage for the transistor, there does not flow current from collector to emitter, so the output voltage stays at 5 volt. This is the plateau you see at the beginning of the sawtooth ramp. From 0.6 volt to about 3 volts, the transistor is conducting and the current through it is increasing, which lowers the output. Ohm's law for a voltage divider circuit. But then from about 3 volts to the full 5 volts, the output voltage goes up again. I think this has to do with the resistor being in saturation, meaning the current from collector to emitter is not increasing, and that the base and emitter voltages are now going up in sync. Can anyone explain this to me? Bueller? This is also the first calibration point in the Bit One, the voltage used for the sawtooth to triangle voltage divider circuit. As you can see, when I adjust it, it has to be just right to get the best triangle. On we go to the sawtooth to pulse width variable pulse width generator. This is achieved using a comparator, the LM393. It just compares the input voltage on the minus input to the pulse width modulation voltage on the plus input. If the input is below the PWM input voltage, the output is high. And if the input voltage is however above the PWM voltage, the output goes to 0. By adjusting the pulse width modulation voltage, you can thus determine the pulse width of the generated pulse wave. All this takes place in this area on the PCB. The 3 waveforms now available from the DCO can be switched on or off using a couple of 4016 CMOS analog switches. Each 4016 contains 4 switches, so we need 9 of them to be able to switch for each DCO the individual sawtooth, triangle and pulse waveforms. Switching is done here on the PCB. And now the final stage, mixing the signals switched on, adding the noise, buffering it and sending it to the VCF and VCA stages for each voice. I'll leave out the CEM3328 because it's enough analog circuitry for now. 2 points for the one explaining to me what happens in the triangle generated resistor.
Synth service look. Service key.
The eyes, not around the eyes, don't look around the eyes, look at my eyes. You're under, you did not repeat, not. 3, 2, 1. You're back in the room.
Actually, it's this. force you to see this step. That was it.